Rampage.
Hey guys, this is Wisper, coming at you again with another IO commentary video. This one is on Helm of the Dominator and the changes that have occurred to IO in 7.12. In this newest update, what they've done is they've changed the way that IO's tether works. And what this has done is this has opened up a whole new way that you can play IO. This is something that, this seems at first like a bit of a meme build, you know, something you just do for fun if you want to screw around, but I know very high level IO players that are top 10 ranked worldwide, IO players that are, you know, top 500 divine ranked within US East and other parts of the world that are playing this build competitively in ranked games, and it's working for them. They're getting wins. So a lot of the information that I'm talking about is in part gleaned from watching them play. This is a game that I've played myself, and as you can see, I've cut the first 7 or 8 minutes out. I want to show you guys what I can do with Helm of the Dominator, because that's the basis of this video. So I've cut the first few minutes, and I'm going to talk about what needs to happen, what your early game items need to be in order to make this build work. So what is this build? What am I talking about? Where am I going with this? They have changed the way IO's tether works as of 7.12. In 7.12, the way IO's move speed works is that his move speed is locked to whatever the move speed is of his tether target. And now, if you're an IO that has no move speed items at all, if you don't have boots, if you don't have Yule Scepter, if you don't have Spirit Vessel, then this is a great boost. You move incredibly slowly until you tether to another player, a creep in a lane, something that has a higher speed than you, which is most things, and you get to move at that speed. That's a great bonus. What you can also do is you can use Helm of the Dominator. And Helm of the Dominator has a lot of great attributes that we'll discuss soon, but the main one that makes this work is that when you dominate a creep using Helm of the Dominator, the speed of that creep is set to 425 movement speed. And that's pretty fast. You know, I think IO's opening move speed is 295, so with boots, you're only looking at about 340. So what this allows is IO gets to have a base 425 move speed very early in the game. Not to mention that the creep that you're tethered to gains the bonus from tether, which you then gain because the creep is moving faster. So you're at about 450 move speed as early as level 6. And that can have a really big impact into the way that IO manipulates the early game. Your speed has suddenly gone up around the same time that your Spirits, which as we've discussed is an incredibly strong spell, Spirits does 500 magic damage at level 7 if you hit all 5 orbs. And not to mention, you can stack the spells on top of each other, because Spirits lasts for 19 seconds, but the cooldown is 14 seconds. So by having your Spirits out pretty close to the end of their cooldown, you can run at someone, hit them with your melee attacks, use your Spirits, and then cast a second round of Spirits to hit them with an additional 500 magic damage. So the benefit of this build, just from the beginning, is that you get a very high move speed very, very fast. And as we can see here, from a level 1 tether that has not been increased, IO is moving at 554 move speed. As you level up tether, the bonus that you get in tether move speed increases as well. And as we'll see as the game continues, being able to increase tether increases your speed even further. As you can see from my inventory, I'm going relatively item light. The idea here is that you want to get Helm of the Dominator as fast as you can, because much like Mechanism or Radiance, the earlier you get it in the game, the more effective it can be. When you're moving super fast and everyone is moving slow, that's going to have a greater impact than when you're moving super fast and everyone is moving at medium speed, or even when some of their players are fast too. The earlier you can get this item, the more effective it is. So what I tend to run is my opening build is basically just the items that build into Soul Ring. Once you have that set up, you have a relatively okay basis to passively heal people at level 1. Once you build Soul Ring, which should occur pretty quickly after the bounty runes are done, you start immediately building into the headdress of Helm of the Dominator. And around minute 8, if you're a little bit slow, minute 9, if you're even slower, minute 10, you will have Helm of the Dominator finished from a support perspective. I am not taking last hits. I am not trying to be the carry in this situation where I'm asking a support to make sure that I'm being babysat. I'm still supporting in the early game. That's a big difference between my build and a lot of the other way people are trying to make this work, is they'll be playing Io in the jungle, so Io can jungle his Helm of the Dominator very quickly. Or I'll play Io middle, so I know that I'm going to be a carry Io and I can get all my last hits at middle. This is from a support perspective. You're still able to keep your teammates alive in the early game, but what you're able to do is build more progressively so that by the time you're 10 minutes in, you can actually do a lot of damage and set up on enemies very, very well. The next item that I'm building is going for drums, because as we've discussed, no move speed that affects Io matters anymore. Boots don't matter. Even the enemy's slows. I think you'll see in a different game that might show up, if a Lifestealer tries to slow down Io, that doesn't matter because Io's move speed is locked to his creep. So as long as the creep isn't slowed, Io can be slowed by somebody and move at the exact same speed he was moving at prior. This sets up, I think over time, once people begin to understand how this works, they'll begin to focus the creep at higher levels. I'm sure divine level players will only need one game before they realize how this plays out. But as of right now, this is not something people understand. And you're able to really manipulate the system in order to avoid a lot of things that might get you killed. And that works out really, really well. So, like I was saying before, move speed on Io doesn't matter. So, the next item that you build is drums. One of the only items that can give speed to other people in your area, including your creep. What this does is this further increases the speed of the creep, which further increases your speed on top of all the bonuses that you gain from Tether. Not to mention that when you activate drums, in a move speed context, you are moving at 550 move speed, which is the maximum move speed in the game. That's haste. And in terms of being able to push, in terms of increasing the attack speed that you gain from drums, the activation of drums, that's a great pushing option. And what a lot of people don't do, something I know that is possible, and I really like doing it, and I don't see it being done very much, people do not refill their drums. And what I mean by that is if you spend an additional 575 gold on the recipe of drums, once you've already built drums, it will refill the charges in your drums. And I think that's really important because in this build, this is one of the only ways Io can really affect pushes, is being able to pop this drums, as we see here. Overcharging is also an option, but because your health regen is relatively strong, but limited, overcharging needs to be saved for more dire circumstances. The nice thing about this build, especially in the early, from the items that we see so far, which would be Soul Ring, Helm of the Dominator, and Drums, is that you get relatively strong HP regen between the Soul Ring and the Helm of the Dominator. Helm of the Dominator has always been known as a very strong HP regen item for the cost, especially on Io. Helm of the Dominator gives 8 HP regen to everyone in a vicinity, including Io, which is pretty strong, HP regen per second for only 2,000 gold. But not only that, do your allies in an area gain 8 HP, but they also gain 8 HP times 1.5 through Tether. So as a result, this one item that it only potentially gives 8 HP is giving closer to 20 once you factor in the way that Tether works, presuming Tether is at max. You know, obviously the new changes to how healing works have to be taken into account as well. But this is a really strong item, certainly for keeping yourself alive, and for helping out allied teammates, keeping your creep alive as well. One of the things that I originally was doing when I was building this build, I was doing it wrong. I was still trying to get Urn of Shadows, I was still trying to get Wand, because I was still in that mindset of playing as an IO that was diving onto teammates in an attempt to save them. And this build is just... It can be played that way, but the fact that you need to rush Helm of the Dominator so early in order to make this build effective, so you don't fall behind, you end up skipping a lot of those, what I would consider to be very basic IO items, in an attempt to really streamline this process to what you really need to make this work. And I think I've done a good job. A lot of this has been taken from higher level players, and it really, really works. The extent of the endgame items, those are things that people are still working on. Soul Ring into Helm of the Dominator into drums is relatively standardized at this point from what I've seen. The items that come after this are still up in the air. But I want to give you guys what I'm working with right now so you can get a little bit of insight into where I'm coming from and why I'm making these decisions. The first thing that I'm looking to buy right now is a Medallion of Courage. One of the things I don't have right now is armor. And I always talk about the importance of armor on IO, because IO is such a low armor hero that loves to be focused by enemy carries. You know, who doesn't love to see a weak IO and jump on that guy for a free kill? So you need to have some amount of armor in your inventory in order to deal with that gank. And Medallion of Courage is an incredibly cheap way to gain a lot of armor that has a lot of functionality. You're gaining some amount of mana regen, which is always nice. Even though you have Soul Ring and you have drums, I think to have that additional mana basis is really, really nice, especially as you're overcharging a lot in order to maintain kills and things of that nature. But what you do get is you get the functionality of the activation of Medallion, which is really interesting. If you are running with a creep that you are tethered to, first off, you're running at like 500 move speed, and that is scary. People want to retreat from that because they don't understand, one, why is IO tethered to a creep running straight at me, but secondarily, ow, 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 spirits are hitting me, ow, ow, ow. So they want to inherently back up, or better yet, they might not be targeting you as much as they are targeting the creep that you're running with. And this means that this is one of the rare situations where by using Medallion of Courage doesn't negatively affect IO, because IO isn't taking hits. The creep is running in front of IO, enemies are running away from IO while IO is attacking them, and you can strip the armor away from your enemies by using, by using Medallion in order to really apply some additional damage pressure to them. I think part of the mentality of this build is that what you gain is the ability to move up to enemies very, very fast. And the idea is how best to take advantage of the fact that you can run these people over. If you try to go for really heavy damage items, that's totally an option, but you can get picked off. And I think that going for magic damage is another option, but you're not really prioritizing the fact that you're within melee range. I think something as simple as a Medallion of Courage, which is just over 1,000 gold, it's very easy to purchase, and it can be used defensively to help your friends out. You can be used offensively in order to strip armor from people who the team is ganking up on, and I really like that multi-use of it. It only lasts for a couple seconds, so if you use it in a dicey situation, you get your armor back very, very fast, and it can be built up into Solar Crest if need be. If you're against a very heavy melee team and you need that extra evasion, if you're against a PA and you need to make sure that there's additional accuracy on that target, Medallion of Courage really invites that option. And in this game specifically, I wanted to screw around really with the whole idea of ripping armor off people. So I go for my next item is a Deso, with the idea being that Deso takes 6 armor away from people on contact, and Medallion of Courage takes 7 armor away from people. Solar Crest takes 10. So what you're able to do is you're able to rip 16 armor off of a single target, and the fact that you are hitting very, very high damage. You have your plus 60 damage at a level 10. You have the additional damage that comes out of Deso, not to mention the fact that by the time you hit level 20 and you have your attack tether talent, if you force your creep to attack that target as well, holy moly, you are doing now double attack speed using it on a target that has 16 less armor than normal. That is an that you're not even talking about damage at that point, like the total damage of the hero. You don't even need 300, 400 damage on hit if you're stripping 100% of the enemy's physical damage resistance away. And I quite like Deso on Io. I think it matches very, very well with what Io doesn't have, which is pushing. Especially after level 20, and you do have that attack tether talent, I think you can do a lot with a Deso. So to have both the Deso and the armor strip of Solar Crest, this was the first time I was playing with this build, and I think it went really, really well. I plan to be working on it in the future. And this is it. I think if you need to refill your drums at this point, you can. Obviously, I have two charges left, so I try not to spend money in places I don't need to. I've also made sure to have infused raindrops in my inventory for a large part of the game. One, because you have a relatively naked inventory when you play this build. You don't need a whole lot of items, and as a result, you know, not only does infused raindrops provide mana, which is always fantastic, but being able to absorb a lot of magic damage, like what you just saw. That big AA ult did very little to me because it ate one of those infused raindrops. Even at the 25-minute mark, I find these drops being very effective depending on the team that you're up against. But this is really it. I think anything after Medallion of Courage is basically just a luxury item that you really don't necessarily need. This Helm of the Dominator build really provides a whole new style to Io, a whole new, because what it does is it allows you to initiate and escape from a very early point in the game, which is not something that's ever really been taken advantage of prior. I think I was one of the only players, the only high-level IO players, that had a build that was developed around move speed. My old build, which I still play, don't get me wrong, I'm experimenting with this one, but I still think my old build works very, very well. But I would have Tranquil Boots, which was a very fast boot, Yule Scepter, which is plus 40 move speed, Spirit Vessel, which is plus 30 move speed, and Tether on top of that. And even with all of those items in my inventory, with Spirit Vessel, Yules, and Tranquil Boots, I was moving at 450 move speed. At like 30 minutes in the game, maybe 25 minutes if I was lucky, you're moving at 450 move speed at minute 9 in the game. Before you hit level 7, you will have the same move speed as like 7,500 gold worth of items. And that's the difference. That's what has not been possible prior, and that's what I don't think you can recreate using any other method. This is another what you guys are seeing on screen is another game with the first couple minutes cut out. I'm just about to go buy Helm of the Dominator here because I really want you guys to see what this item can do. As you see from the items I have in my inventory, this is basically what we've discussed. I have an infused raindrop, I have a soul ring, and I'm about to finish off Helm. And it's just over 8 minutes in the game. And my score is 1-1-1. It's not particularly fantastic score. I haven't had free farm in my lane. I might have, taken a stacked camp if I could, but that's about it. And what you see here is immediately my move speed jumps up by 150. And I'm trying to make sure to dominate creeps that are going to give me the best bonus. And this is sort of up for contention, you know, this is very situational. Whatever your opponents you're playing against need to have the right enemies, the right dominated creeps in order to counter those enemies. I think there are some relatively safe ones that you can always take. The tomato, which is what I have now. I'm not 100% sure on their names. There's a lot of slang when it comes to jungle creeps, so you guys will have to bear with me. But Big Red Tomato gives attack speed bonus to everyone, which is always nice, especially when you are trying to run down people. Having additional attack speed is always great, especially if you're playing with an item that has a proc chance. Like, I believe in this game I try going for Basher in the hopes that when I'm chasing people and getting hits off, I can bash them and basically set up a free kill. But obviously the more bashes you have, the higher chance, or the more attacks you have, the higher chance you'll bash. The higher chance you will bash. Bleh. So having attack speed is great for that. There's an Alpha Wolf that gives 30% physical damage buff to the team. That's great for mid to end game when you're pushing and people have their damage really built up. There's a Satyr that gives plus 8 HP regen, or 6 HP regen in an AoE, which is great if you're having trouble keeping your health up if you're playing against a really aggressive team. But there's other tricks out there as well, things that aren't dominated nearly as often as they should be, and have a lot of effectiveness. A lot of small camp creeps that people don't really talk about too much. The ghost of the small camp, you can do a quick Google to see what I mean by the word ghost. Ghost in small camp basically gives you a free Scotty every time you want to... hold on, I need to hold my thought because this is actually quite important. Being able, when you're relocated, you cannot bring your creep with you. But what you can do is basically set your creep up for fantastic tether saves by the time you actually come back. So I was surrounded by several heroes there, and I was able to get out by running my tomato within tether distance, but across the map to the point where they wouldn't be able to catch up to me. And I ended up getting a double kill for it, which is really, really fantastic. There's some really awesome plays that you can make now that you have complete control of a tether target. So much of IO beforehand was hoping that your allies would be in the right positions, or screaming at them to move away from you so that when you tethered you would get pulled to where they were. But being able to have 100% control of a creep is really fantastic. And I especially like this one. I don't know what it's called, but the fact that you can net people and root them is a really fantastic initiation technique that sets up IO to be within spirits distance. You can hit with all 5 spirits, allows other teammates to get in there. It's a great interrupt. I really quite like this creep as well. On top of the fact that the creep can summon 2 skeletons, which are great for pushing when you have that option as well. But in this game, I still go drums after I go for Helm the Dominator, but I know I will be building some different items. Medallion of Courage perhaps as well, but I know that I saw very high-level players playing this with, yeah, like I said before, Basher, with the idea being that getting off 1 bash with all of your additional attack speed, running around with the tomato as well so that you get the additional attack speed aura from that dominated creep, is a very effective way to make that work. I didn't see too many positive results with Basher from a personal perspective. I know that the hero, this was played by Mikushiru when I was watching him, who's probably top 5 IO player in the world, certainly within Russia, which is where he is located. And I know he plays with Basher, and I was trying to imitate his style, see how effective I could make it for myself. And I didn't like it so much. I know he really likes proc chance items like Maelstrom and things like this, Daedalus, stuff like that. But I didn't seem to find Basher to be terribly effective, hence why I was going for Armor Strip in the last game. I think here you can see me screwing up my, there we go, screwing up my microcontrol a little bit. I was trying to... There's another complication with this new style of play is trying to micro the use of the creep while also making sure IO is attacking and that spirits are at the right radius and things like that. It can become a little bit dizzying. There's a lot of new things to try and take control of when you do this. On that note, however, one of the things that is very easy about this build is that because tether is now infinite and you tether to your creep for very long periods of time, it's almost a guarantee that if you need to break tether to jump on somebody and save them, if there is a big fight breaking out and let's say two guys are hitting Invoker and you need to tether to Invoker to make sure he'll live, it is relatively easy to do that because there's a basic guarantee that your tether will be off of cooldown by the time you need to use it. Because you're tethering to the creep for, I mean, gosh, how long have I been tethering to this creep for? 2 minutes now? Well over the 12 seconds it takes for there to be a full tether cooldown. So what I do find is that as long as you press the tether button an extra time, once to make sure to break tether, and the second time to reinitiate tether to whoever needs saving, it's actually relatively easy to make sure that you are always available to tether to someone, even though admittedly you don't have the tranquil boots, you don't have the wand, the urn that would normally be your go-to saving items. Even though you don't have those, the option to break tether and jump over to help somebody is still there. Yeah, I think there is still a lot to map out about this build. I want to play with different creeps that you can dominate. I want to work with different endgame item combinations in order to understand what is the best and most helpful thing. I think a real conversation to have about this is what happens at 55 minutes. This is normally a pretty strong item build to end the game quickly. You end up becoming very strong very early. You have very high move speed and therefore and relatively high kill potential at level 7 all the way through 10 when you get your bonus damage from the talents. So you are able to get a lot of early kills faster because you move faster. And how does that situation work in a 55-minute game? Are you still tethering to creeps at 55 minutes? Surely not, right? Surely you want to... Your allies have become so powerful and so strong that it makes sense that you want to tether them, surely, instead of... So how does that play out? If you're not able to win your early game and you're not done by 35 minutes and the game drags and drags and drags, how do you transition into a super end game version of this build? I'm not so sure. I'm still working on that myself. Like I always say, I'm not an expert in any of these things. I'm still trying to map it out. But there's a lot of information that I've learned. I'm just trying to pass it on to you guys. And I think there's still a lot to explore. Yeah, you can see me basically almost done with Basher here. There's definitely a lot more to look up, to try and find out what are the best creeps for different situations, how, if you have a creep like one of the very small satyrs has a dispel slow effect that they can use, how even if that creep is a very good creep for the situation, is it worth getting knowing that you will have to micro that creep around IO's attack and all these things in order to make sure that that spell gets off? These are all questions you have to ask yourself and try and address for every individual game. What's going to work best? But this build works. It's as simple as making the creep AFK follow you, and then you tether to that creep and you just control IO. Once you get more comfortable, you start controlling both the creep and IO at the same time, making them attack the same targets as we see here, microing the use of that creep to try and get more damage into waves, or as we see onto heroes as well. And then ultimately making the best of the move speed, trying to move out of the way of things. For instance, playing games against Invoker, like the meteor that comes from Invoker, you can just walk away from it. The ultimate from AA, you can just walk away from it because you are so fast. All you have to do is just walk normally. And when your basic move speed is 525, you can just walk away from anything. And it just works. Ooh, I actually do want to talk about a certain subject, which is, I know I'm kind of rambling here, guys. I put two things together. There's no script. I'm kind of just going off the top of my head, and I'll be done very, very soon. But I think there is a real conversation to be had about whether you level up spirits first. I'm sorry, whether you level up overcharge first or tether first. After I've introduced this topic horribly, let me reset. You always level up spirits first. Spirits is number one because that's your main damage source. It's an incredibly powerful spell. The earlier you get it, the more damage, the more effective it is. Once you're done leveling spirits to max, which is after level 7, do you continue to max out overcharge, or do you max out tether? And this, originally, you always do overcharge, always, because the only thing that changed from tether is the amount that you slowed somebody with your tether, which is a pretty rare occurrence, like, anyway. To slow someone with your tether in a way that wins a game is basically not going to happen. So it would make you a little bit faster, and it would increase your slow, but overcharge would increase the rate that you and your tether partner attacked when overcharged, and the amount of damage blocked from you and your tether partner when you overcharged. So that was always way more important. But now there's a conversation to be had around the fact that they've changed tether. Not only are the speed differences at each level of tether more pronounced, you're slower in the beginning, and the more you level it up towards the end, it'll get back to normal. But the amount that you heal somebody through tether has been changed as well. And so there's a real conversation. I've seen, for instance, Mikushiru will level up tether first now in an attempt to gain more move speed once he has Helm the Dominator. The first level of tether is a 7% move speed boost, and the highest level of tether is a 16% move speed boost. So you're moving up 9% total move speed over those 3 additional levels. I would argue that that's a mistake. I think that the fact that you build drums and the fact that that move speed difference, I told myself I would look up this move speed difference. There's going to be a comment showing up on screen to say what the difference is between a level 1 tether with drums and a level 4 tether with drums on a dominated creep. And I think the difference is not very much. And the way that you have to look at it is that the tether slow of tether doesn't really exist in my mind. So when you level up tether, you get 2 things. You get the increased level of healing, and you get the increased move speed. And your increased level of healing doesn't really matter because you're tethered to a creep for most of the game. So what you really get is move speed. And when you level up overcharge, you have increased attack damage. Increased attack speed, and you also have additional damage block. But you're not really worried about damage block because you're tethered to a creep. The whole way damage block is meant to be used is if someone's taking a lot of damage, a teammate, you can overcharge them and they'll take less damage. It's not really meant to be used in order for you to block damage onto yourself. People do use it that way. It's not that effective. So what... Oh, that's very interesting. He actually medallioned me, and then I medallioned him, which made me strip twice as much armor off of myself, and I ended up dying. But another thing you can see here is the effectiveness of creeps after you die. You actually have something that you get to do once you're dead, and I've been able to get kills with my creeps once I've died as well. So that's a big thing to look out for. Onto the topic that I was originally speaking of, I think it might be more effective to continue leveling up overcharge as compared to tether. When you level tether, you get move speed and healing doesn't really matter. And when you level up overcharge, you get attack speed and damage block, but damage block doesn't really matter. So what's more important for killing? The additional 9% move speed or the additional 30 attack speed? I would argue they're relatively interchangeable. My gut instinct is that now that you're building more attack items and you're starting to progress heavier into damage, that it makes sense that you'd want things to support that damage, i.e. attack speed, but that's, again, a conversation for you all to have individually and in every single game to ascertain which is the best situationally for every situation. I think another thing that I've done here is you've seen that I've refilled my drums. I used drums a little bit in the early game in order to get some kills, to run away from some fights that wasn't always pushing based, and I'm able to refill my drums so that when we have these big end game pushes, like now, I can drums into the tower, give all of my teammates and my creep a big push, and we can get it down even faster. So that's all, guys. Sorry that this video dragged on a little bit, but there's a lot of information and a lot of things to talk about here. I hope what I've presented is really helpful and hopefully fun. I think this is a really fun build. It's not difficult. The item that activates it comes very, very early in the game, and your enemies, much like all the fun that IO is, your enemies have no effing clue how to deal with this problem. They try to slow IO down and he moves at the same speed of his creep, so it doesn't work and they're really confused. They try to kill your creep and then you just break tether and tether to another hero. It's very complex for them to try and keep up and understand what's happening. And that works to your advantage, like all things with IO. The less people understand about your hero, the better. I really don't know if I got that stun on Bristleback or if that was Witch Doctor. I didn't see. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that what you've seen is interesting and exciting, and I hope it's something that you guys go home and try. I am working on an in-game build for this, so that you can, when you just pick IO and go to the drop-down menu for guides, it should be in there. It's not up and running quite yet, but that's because I'm working out the end-game options. But once I do, I will post a video about it, and you guys will be the first to know. So thank you so much, guys. Hope to see you soon. Try these builds out. They work. See ya.